Welcome to BU Project Real Talk. We are so excited to have you join us today. I'm Sarah Jane, and here at BU Project, we discuss a range of topics from starting your own business to living clean to building resilience, just to name a few. And we do this with the purpose of inspiring and empowering women to live their lives with purpose and impact. And of course, help women to live a life they love. Today on the show, we have Melody Towns, the founder of the incredible Be Hers organisation. Be Hers is a national charity raising funds and awareness to support the fight against slavery and exploitation. Be Hers works in partnership with anti-trafficking organisations locally and globally to see women and children set free. Through social enterprise events and collaborations, Be Hers donates 100% of the profits to support the fight for freedom. Welcome to the show, Melody.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to see you.
It's so great to have you here today. And I'm so excited about just our conversation and just what we're going to talk about today. But before we jump into all of that, Melody, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what are some of the things you like to do in your spare time?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm a mum of 3 kids. So I have Judah, Marley and Taj. Judah has just turned 15.
Wow.
Marley is 12, got nearly 13, and Taj is 11. So pretty much I don't have any spare time at the moment. In between kind of working and my husband Jake and the kids, I am literally an Uber driver in my spare time. So youth group and friends, and we live on a property out of town. So it's a good 30, 40 minutes back and forward. But I'm cherishing the moments at the moment. So I was whinging a lot about it, but just realizing, my son turned 15 this weekend, just realizing all those car trips are going to end one day. So yeah, at the moment, my hobby is kind of driving my kids around. Yeah. Other than that, we love going out on the water. So we're into fishing. Our family is a big wakeboarding family. So we spend a lot of time at the lake. Our kids are super into wakeboarding and surfing and a bit outdoorsy and active. And yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Yeah, that sounds like so much fun. Like, honestly, like I'm like, oh, that sounds like great to get out on the water and just do stuff like that.
Yeah, we live in Tasmania, and Tasmania is like beautiful for outdoors and nature, and it's one of the bonuses of living here because it's really accessible. So most properties are around the water somewhere. So we've kind of got into that as our kids got older, and it makes up for the cold winters. I mean, the winters are really long and really cold. So in winter we don't do nothing but comfort eat and sit inside. And we make up for it by being outside.
That's awesome. I love that. And so we know that you're busy being a driver for your kids, but you also run an incredible organization called Be Hers. Can you tell us a bit about how it all started?
Well, it was just an idea to make a difference. So for me, and I feel like a lot of Christian women have this story. For me, I was sitting in Colour Conference, and honestly, I've heard so many people say this. I was sitting in Colour Conference, and I heard the Sisterhood Morning, which is always based around making a difference in the world, and it was when A21 had just started. So Christine Caine got up and shared about human trafficking and making a difference to help, predominantly children that had been trafficked, women and children. And I have a background in journalism. And at the time, I remember sitting there thinking, how do I not even really know about this? How do I, it just really shocked me that I didn't know about it. And to make it, I guess, more poignant and impactful in my life, I'd also had my little girl Marley that year. So I was at Colour Conference with my daughter. I think she's about 3 months old, sitting there with her on my lap with the headphones, and just thinking, we're so excited when we had her and all these dreams and plans for her life. And, I'm really big on placing value on women and thinking, I'm going to speak into my daughter's life. I'm going to tell her how beautiful she is and how valuable and all of that stuff. And then hearing about little girls that were stolen, to be raped and abused was just so confronting. And so, I basically came home from the conference and felt inspired to do something. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I lived in Hobart. I had only just moved here. I had a handful of friends from my kids' school. I had no background in non-for-profit. So we started a fundraising high tea, and it was probably like the daggiest high tea of all time. There was 10 people in the committee, and I'd come home and share this with my girlfriends. And I remember specifically in Colour Conference thinking, this is so heartbreaking, but how do we get this message out to my friends at school who will never walk into Colour Conference or never walk into church and say to me all the time, I want to make a difference in the world, and don't have these opportunities to do that. And so, yeah, we got 10 people together. Each 10 of us pretty much paid for 10 people to come on our table. So we paid for people to be there. So we had 100 people. And the goal was to raise $3,000. I think we raised $10,000 that year, which seemed like amazing for me at the time, because I felt like I want to do something, but I only had a small amount of money. And then the following year, those 100 people invited 100 people. And then basically this little event started growing. So within a number of years, it started selling out to 1,000 women right across our community from all walks of life. And it's kind of how it started. And from then it's kind of grown into a charity and all the different things. But basically it's still the same. It's a gathering of women who have heard this message and are like, what the heck? How does this happen? And rather than being overwhelmed, what can we do to actually make a difference?
And I'm thinking about the women that are either watching or listening today, and they might be in a similar position where they're like, I just want to do something. I want to make a difference in my community, but I don't even know where to start. And sometimes it can be quite overwhelming to think there's such a huge need out there. How can me, little old me, make a difference? What advice would you give to those women today?
Just start. When I did, I had come back from Colour. It was only a few months later that we did it. And it was actually one of my girlfriends that said to me, I hadn't done anything because I was, life happened, and she said, you were so moved at Colour. I remember I had money in my purse to go shopping in Darling Harbour like we usually do. And I couldn't go because I felt so sick. And I just was like, it's so unfair. And she said, just do something. And so we did. And so it's just, 3 months after we did. And like I said, we had no event experience. Like we were knocking on everyone's doors asking for donations, and and human trafficking is like a big overwhelming issue that is really actually hard to describe to people, but every time we tell the story, people would connect. And it's just that, just start. I think I meet so many women that are like, I'm overwhelmed, what do I do? I'm overwhelmed now thinking, what do I do, now that it's grown to a national charity. But you just keep going, and God opens doors for you, and gives you the courage to step into them. I think when I started, I was, and it's 10 years ago, but I was a young mum. I had 2 more kids in that process. I just kept going, and I'm so glad that I did. Perseverance is actually, I think God moves when you don't know what you're doing.
I love that. And since that, was it a high tea? Was that?
It was high tea. It was a high tea in a little function centre in Hobart. And it was funny because we started in the tiniest little room they had, and then the biggest room they had ended up being our change rooms because we had to move to bigger venues. And it ended up being massive, and then going across Australia. But at the same time, the first high tea we had, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, like we can actually do something. It wasn't about the funds, and actually it's still not about the funds. It's actually about the awareness. It's about, we can actually mobilize a community of people to care about an issue that they would never normally know about, just by being brave enough to talk about it.
And when you first started, you started with the high tea. What happened after that? How did you go, okay, we're going to do another high tea, or we're going to do another event? What kind of led you to where you are today?
So basically we just did another high tea, and that year prayed that we would fill the room again, and in faith booked a bigger room. And that, like I mentioned, it went from 100 to 200. Actually within the first year it tripled in size, and then it kept tripling in size. And so we did that for a few years, but along the way, we were just gathering women in our communities, and you put out a post on Facebook, and the website would crash because everyone would just book their tickets, and it was this weird favor, and then kind of like the fourth or fifth year in, there's some certain women that started coming along. One of them, my good friend Talita from Esther and Co. I literally just went into her little shop in Hobart at the time and asked if we could put pamphlets in her shopping bags. And she now has one of the biggest online retail stores in the world. But at the time, she said, look, I'm going to help you, and paid for a graphic designer for us. So instantly we had a graphic designer, and so our branding lifted. And I didn't have a clue really about branding at the time. Another girl, Hannah, from another little jewelry store at the time here in Hobart, we asked for a pair of earrings, and she donated a couple of pairs of earrings for the silent auction. It was just like a normal kind of fundraising, high tea, The following year, she sat in the room and cried, and Francesca, her business just exploded, and she started doing collection for us. So her little pair of earrings the following year turned into $40,000 worth of bracelets sold on the night. And now that's turned into, over $500,000 worth of donations. And these partnerships started happening with like-minded women that just God put on their hearts to help. And the team just continued to grow. And so from those little high teas, we started to go into those sellout events, and then people around the country started messaging saying, I want to be involved. Like, I'm really inspired by what you do. I want to help. And so then we started launching a smaller event. So we had the north of the state here, and then we went to New South Wales. Some of my friends I grew up in Wollongong, reached out and said, I want to be involved. And I think they did 4 years of fundraisers there that just continued, started to grow. Then we went to Queensland, and that started to grow. But all the while, we're a volunteer organisation, and so that comes with challenges. So we were spreading out, and then in 2017 we kind of looked at it, and we were raising all this money, all this awareness, and it was amazing. Like every single day was like, wow, what's God going to do? And people were becoming Christians in it because I just seeing these miracles and walking into sisterhood or walking to church and just giving their lives to the Lord, because it was so obvious that it was God's favour. I remember it was actually 2016, someone spoke over my life and said, you're going to have lots of influence this year. And I'm really shy. And I was like, yeah, right. It's not about that for me. It's just about making a difference. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I laugh at it now, because it was a year that I just kept winning all these awards. Like we won the Telstra Business of the Year award, and we weren't even a registered business. We didn't even have an ABN, because all the money that we raised went directly into the accounts of our charities. So every year would start with zero again. So then, we continued. That really kind of made us grow a lot. But then in 2017, we kind of took the plunge and thought we need to become a registered charity. We need to have enough funds left over so that we can grow and become sustainable. And so we did that. To become a registered charity, you've got to realise we had no money. So I just remember going into KPMG with a baby on my hip in my gym gear and sitting down with a board full of men, and they all cried. I told them about, women that were being trafficked. They all cried, and they did it the whole setup for us for free. And there's a story after story after story of that. And 2018, we thought, okay, we're going to get a website. We didn't even have a proper website, so we're going to build a website, and we're going to make sure that's really functioning. And people keep saying, well, I live in Melbourne and you don't have an event in Melbourne, or I live here, what can I do? So we thought we'll set up a social enterprise and we'll start selling merch, because Francesca, for example, they sold so much merch at our events. We started working with She Rescue Home, designing jumpers and doing a range with them, and employing women in Cambodia and selling the merchandise here. And then COVID hit. And so it's just been this crazy journey. Then COVID hit, and it was the biggest year for us as an organisation. No events, no staff, but we had a website, we had merchandise that just kept selling out. Jumpers all of a sudden trended because everyone wanted loungewear. And that's the story. And now it's like, what do we do next? But I just have this feeling that I don't want to do it unless God's hands on it, because you can see where it has been, because there was never a plan. The plan was just, God, break my heart, for what breaks yours, and it's these women and children. And when my heart stops breaking for it, I'll stop, because, it's definitely God's favour more than some thought out plan, really.
Yeah. Amazing. And how do you, being in God's favour, what does that look like for you and Be Hers? Do you have a strategy, like a 3-year goal or a 5-year goal? or is it really just God, you just direct our every step?
It's both. I think now, the favour of God over those last 10 years have also been some of the hardest years of my life. In those 10 years, there was just this unremarkable favor. Like literally every day was a miracle. Like you'd go to the post box and there'd be $5,000 check in there, or I ended up holding the Queen's baton. I'm like the most unathletic person in the world, but the whole of Hobart heard about human trafficking. Just these weird things were happening. But at the same time, my health started to decline really badly. So there's, I think there's always that spiritual battle in stepping out. And at this point in time, I think you do need a strategic plan. I think anyone that runs a business or an organization or a charity will say you need a strategic plan. And we kind of grew so quickly with so much momentum. There wasn't time for a strategic plan. Our strategic plan was like, God, we're going to do this and help. And then he did. But now I think stepping back a little bit, I feel like God's given me this gift and I want to steward it well. So this year is the year of the strategic plan. The 3-year goal, the 5-year goal, what are we aiming to do? How do we empower and mobilize the women that are leaning in so that it's not my organization. I want it to outgrow me so that other people can be involved. But even in that, I think last year I said I want to step aside and work on a strategic plan and not be so hands-on because I was packing and sending and getting a buzz. I think every small business gets a buzz when you get an order. And so I was busy doing that, and we made a decision that we're going to put on an operations manager, and we've never paid anybody. Like we've had contractors here and there, but to put on a full-time operations manager was our goal. And it was like, how are we going to do this? And within a month, we had corporate sponsors come on board and pay her whole year's wage, and the most ideal person come on. And so, I think for me, there's the strategic plan, but there's also knowing God's favor and faithfulness. And I feel like that there is a really good example of like, we had a plan, but we can't do the plan without God's favor, and so it's a bit of both. It's a bit of both. And most of our team aren't planners, so that's a problem, which I laugh at because I know you're a planner. We're like, we have these board meetings and we start with, let's get a plan, and then it's like, let's do this and this and this, and we go out into the most crazy ideas. Yeah. And so, Ali, our operations manager, is a planner, and she's like, girls, rein it in. But there's something in me that knows that God can do it as well. And so I'm also really aware that you can have a plan and then God can blow it out of the water and do something better than you plan. So it's diligence and, all the right procedures now, but I'm still, waiting for God's favor. And, sometimes the journey for me is God's favor when I'm sick, like the ability to show up and make a difference. And, even doing BHOs is a blessing in that because it's perspective. You can be at home feeling terrible and sorry for yourself, but then the perspective of what we're actually doing kind of gets out again. So, yeah.
Amazing. And Melody, you mentioned that your health started to deteriorate. Did you ever have moments of going, I don't know if I could do this, like it's just too hard? Or did you always feel, no, I've just got to keep going?
Bit of both, to be honest. On my days where I do feel, I have multiple autoimmune diseases, which and chronic fatigue, which really does wipe you out. There have been moments where I thought, I can't keep doing this. Like I've got to rest, and I have rested, and I have taken that time, and I think that's been the lesson for me is you can rest. And I've just said, God help me, like I can't do this today, and He always has. Ali is a good example of that, of me going, I need to rest, but I don't want to waste what you've given me, and I believe in the promises that I've been, and here along comes Ali. But it's I think like anything in life, there's always a struggle, always, and then there's self-doubt. Like, I started doing a high tea. I'd never planned to be running a charity, and the red tape and the rules and all of this stuff that goes along with that. I always feel a bit overwhelmed by that stuff because I'm creatively driven, I guess. But God brings along the right people, and I don't think we're meant to do things by ourselves. Be Hers is an example of a collaborative effort. Without everybody who joined the party, it wouldn't happen. Yes, I've persevered and I've kept going, but only by the grace of God, really. Yeah.
Melody, you touched on something, self-doubt. I think that's really an important topic, especially as Christian women. It's something that I struggle with, that feeling inadequate, feeling like unworthy, or feeling like who am I to do what I feel like God is calling me to do.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that self-doubt? Like, what is your way of, you don't feel good enough, or, you've been given an award, like, how do you kind of navigate that?
Sometimes well, sometimes not.
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing for me is just showing up anyway. There's like, I always have felt that. I think like a lot of people do, but there have been significant moments where I've just shown up anyway, and I've just said, God, help me. And, I remember one of our events was one of the biggest events we'd ever had. And it was in like a ferry terminal. The sound echoed really badly. And so you've got to imagine 1,000 female voices. And everyone was just talking, and the MC couldn't cut through. And I was getting kind of upset because it was like this amazing party, but you're like, we're not here to have a party, but no one would listen. And I remember feeling so nervous about to walk out on the stage and going, God, help me, because I cannot. I've got a quiet voice. I can't yell. I'm not going to be able to break through. And the minute I walked out onto the stage, it was literally like, makes me emotional, makes me remember. It was like you could hear a pin drop. Everyone just went completely silent, and they were so moved. And it was like God made a way for me. And I think, in that moment, I could have turned around and thought, stuff it, I'm not going out. No one's going to listen anyway. What's the point? But yeah, God moved and He made a way for me. And I think my confidence isn't in myself. My confidence is in God will make a way. And it is tempting to be filled with self-doubt and feel like, even with Be Hers, sometimes I feel like we're not enough of a charity. We need to be doing more things. But we're doing what's been given to us and what's in our hand, and God's blessed it, and that's enough. So I think you just got to show up. You've just got to show up and put yourself in those situations, because when God does come through, it's like, wow, like it's just a reminder, it's not just about us, and no one's going to be perfect. And if we were, there'd be no miracle in it. Like, if I didn't have self-doubt, it wouldn't be about God's miracle. It wouldn't be about, that wouldn't be the great story that it is, because it'd be unrelatable, really. Like, I think part of it is people relate to people that are honest about where they're at, because we all have self-doubt.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And that, I honestly got goosebumps as you were sharing that. And just how good God is. And, there's so many stories in the Bible where people didn't feel good enough, or they didn't feel like they had what they needed to have, and how God just showed up anyway. And I love that reminder that, I think Christine Kane says it, and now I've forgotten what she says, but basically God equips, those that are called. And I know I've butchered that, but basically, if you are willing to step in, God will do the rest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what it sounds like He's done in your life and in Be Hers. You've just said yes, and then He's just done everything that He's needed to do, which is amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And I think it just it points to His goodness, really. And I think, we've all got different gifts and talents. It says that in the Bible. But I think what I love about Be Hers, it's like you can see God drawing the people to collaborate together, and it's not a competition. It's not us. It's literally like, I'm like, God, I need someone who understands operations. He's like, here you go. Or I need someone who understands, back in the day, graphic design, and here you go. And it's this beautiful blending of people with the same purpose. So your insecurities are there, yes, but that God's going to provide. And I just have to do my bit. And I think for me, my bit really, the more I do this, I think my bit is showing up. And showing up sometimes, I think, as I mentioned, with illness and, with family, showing up sometimes is hard because you're like, no, I just want to binge Netflix. Like, I don't want to have this stuff. But then I just think, wow, like I would never, ever, ever have experienced God like I have if I didn't do that first high tea. And not only that, but all the people that have been helped. And I just think all it is just showing up and then see what happens. And if it failed, oh well, like, there's something else.
Yeah. Wow. That's so beautiful and so encouraging. And I hope that the women that are listening and watching today, that you feel encouraged and inspired to just go for it. If God has placed something on your heart and you've been thinking about it and you've been praying about it, maybe this is your chance to just step out in faith, as Melody and the team at Be Hers has done. And so that's definitely encouraged me, Melody, just as you're sharing, just to show up anyway, even when we don't feel like it, even when we're tired, even when we're afraid. Because even fear, like for me, running BU Project, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear in that, what if no one engages with what I'm doing? Or what if people think, I don't know, people look down on me because I'm stepping out into something that not a lot of people around me are doing. And I think that have you ever felt on your journey, has it ever felt like a lonely journey, or have you always felt you've had people there supporting you along the way?
Both. So I've been really blessed with the Be Hers journey. I've made some really beautiful friends out of it that I never would have met before. And we've kind of, bonded over this stuff. And I think because it's funny, but the last few years, it was kind of like an adrenaline rush of like, whoa, what's going to happen next? And we're very similar. And so that's been amazing in that sense. As a leader, I felt lonely in it. I think I've got a board of women that have been amazing, but I think in terms of the internal struggle, what we're talking about before, do I show up today? I feel so sick. I've got to carry this weight. I've got, this ACNC report that needs to come in. I've got that to come in. And that side of it has been harder. And navigating leadership, it's amazing when it's amazing. And then I'm not very good at conflict. I'm not very good at mapping out, some of these projects and thinking through, the risk factor, all that sort of stuff. And that part of it can be lonely. People that leave, navigating that, I've always, and I remind myself this all the time, the heart of Be Hers has never been about building this community and then no one's ever allowed to leave again. The heart of it has been everyone's welcome. It's an open door. I don't care what walk of life you're from, it's an open door. And if we can inspire somebody to care about anything that's going on in the world and they go out and they start their own organization, amazing, like totally want to champion them. The reality of that, sometimes when you journey with people for many years and they go off and you kind of lose a friend in a way because you're doing life together. And I think that's been something I've had to learn to navigate, how to release people in a really healthy way, how to navigate some of this stuff, this self-doubt and show up. And I'm a bit of an open book, but learning, how do you not show up to your team meetings and go blah on everybody? How do you be strong but authentic? That kind of stuff has been hard, and kind of looking around going, I don't really know anyone else in this space. Like I know people leading in churches. I don't really know very many people leading, in this space. And standing up in front of audiences of women that are unchurched and, leading teams of people and going, God help me, because I just am out of my comfort zone, I guess. And I guess there has been areas of it being lonely, but at the same time, my life is so much bigger for it. So much bigger. There's so many people that I've been privileged to journey with over the years that, like I said, I never would have met before, that have made me think about life differently. And even at the moment, we have a little sewing centre. We've employed some beautiful refugee women there, and that's so out of my comfort zone. I don't even know how to sew a button. But we felt just to help in our local community, and that journey has been the highlight of Behurst for me, walking through this life with this beautiful family from Afghanistan. And I don't know, I read a verse in the Bible yesterday about God placing the lonely in families, and I thought of this family, and they've become like our family, and I thought it was about us helping them. But when I've been in hospital before, the only person that brought me a meal was Stirai, who hasn't, and they've become my family, and just going, God knows what you need. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
I feel like that was a really long answer.
It was really good. It was really beautiful. And you touched on something about authenticity. How do you stay authentic when you are challenged with conflict, when you are challenged with not knowing if the event's going to pull through, or not knowing if the finances are going to come through, or yes, you have people leaving and moving on to something else. How do you stay authentic in all of that?
I think that the harder way to stay authentic is when things are going really good. I think when people are pulling, when you've got conflict and you've got issues, you're so reliant on God. And I know as a team, when we got stuff going on, we kind of band together and we're like, we need a solution, and we feel really close and we wait for the miracle. And but when things are going really good, like some of the moments where I've actually struggled with authenticity and have had to look in the mirror and think, who even are you, is when I've gotten cocky. It's when things have been going really good, and we've done an event and it's amazing and it's in the paper and everyone's like, wow. And you start getting a little bit like, I don't know, like your ego kind of jumps in a little bit.
Yeah.
And I noticed that if you're sharing about this issue, like the whole reason we do this, and it sounds scripted, and that's what I pray that, when that happens, I think that's when you lose your authenticity, because it's too easy. It's too, and I think for me, my prayer is, God, help keep stretching me, because I don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
So that's been more of our struggle to be authentic, has been when it's been really, it gets in your slipstream, and you start doing it, and you repeat the same story 300 times, and and everyone claps, and you're not feeling like, I always want to feel that moment of when I walk down on the stage, I'm like, God, please help everyone to shut up, because they don't care about me. I need your authority because I don't have any. I think the greater risk is when you do, and then it goes to your head, and and it's too easy. That makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. That's challenging, but it's a good reminder. It's a really good reminder. Yeah. Melody, I just wanted to quickly just touch on the slavery and exploitation. So you support A21. Do you support other organisations as well?
Yeah, we do. So we have a handful of organisations that we support, and we look at different projects every year. So as you mentioned, 100% of our profits go towards our foundation. However, if you make a donation to our foundation, the whole 100% goes. So any donations we don't touch at all for admin or anything like that. But we basically work with charities. A21 was the one that we initially predominantly worked with. As I mentioned, this whole thing started here in Chris Kane talk, but we also work with She Rescue Home in Cambodia. It's beautiful. I love Lee Ramsey and the team there. It's grassroots, and I don't know, I've been to Cambodia a couple of times and met the girls, and I mean, it's heartbreaking. There's a house full of girls, mainly under 12 years old, who have been trafficked or at risk of trafficking, but they're doing an amazing job loving them and creating, we fund education programs there and employment. So, as I mentioned, we did the jumper range with them. We've just started working with IJM, so funding a lot of their stuff in the Philippines. Cyber sex trafficking, which again is horrific. And the reason we've added IGM to what we do is because cyber sex trafficking, I mean, the stuff's getting downloaded here. So we have, yes, we have an audience of women, but all those women go home and talk to their men. And we have kids, and I have my kids all the time on TikTok and on all this stuff. And so we feel it's really important to actually educate people here about what goes on, and then partner with organisations that are actually, rescuing these kids. Last year, we also partnered with AIM, which is in Cambodia. They are another amazing organisation. I went to a little town there, which used to be one of the worst towns for child trafficking in Phnom Penh, and they've turned it around. So they've got a daycare centre and an amazing school, a men's gym where they connect with the local men. And what used to be brothels is now offices and shelters and sewing centres, and that where they help people. And so, yeah, we partnered with the education program last year. And then locally, I think the blessing of being this far down the journey is when Taliban took over in Afghanistan. The women in our sewing centre were so sad. Like, it was such an awful situation. And they're only on temporary visas. Half of their family was still in Afghanistan.
Wow.
We had instant resource. We were able to help raise, we did $20,000 just directly to that family, and we've been able to get legal support and get them here. And then most recently, Ukraine. And so basically, we just funnel all of our funds into our foundation, and then we partner with charities that we feel are making a difference in the fight against trafficking and slavery. And that's a big part of what we do. And then I think on the ground here, raising awareness at the moment, it's been kind of stuck to online, but that's been amazing because it's gone out, far and wide. And actually educating people here about it as well. So I feel like, we're playing our little part in connecting possibly with an audience that maybe those other charities aren't connecting to, but we're able to funnel our funds into supporting the bigger picture and helping them actually rescue people.
Amazing. And so if there's women today that they want to get involved, maybe they don't want to start their own charity, but they want to be a part of a charity, what are some ways that they could get involved with Be Hers?
Yeah, sure. So if you jump onto our website at behers.org.au, we have a multitude of ways, really. So you can volunteer your time. We have people doing research and writing articles, helping with social media. There's always room for volunteers. You can host your own freedom gathering. We've got one coming up actually in a couple of weekends' time, and high teas and brunches and that kind of thing. We also have Shop for Change. So, this jumper that I'm wearing, it's Freedom Jumper. All the profits go towards our charities that we support. So there's a whole range of products on there as well. Or you can just donate. And as I mentioned, regular donations make a huge difference. Those regular donations mean that we can, help fund some of the education or the employment for the girls in Cambodia that we work with. And 100% of that money goes directly to the foundations. And if you can literally jump online and have a look at it, and you'll see that it goes in and then it goes out to the charities, and we don't touch it. So there's a few different ways there that you can be involved.
Amazing. That's so good. And I just want to say that I'm wearing the Freedom Jumper too.
Very cool.
I love it. I bought my sister and myself these jumpers, and they're amazing. And I just highly recommend them to anyone. And also, it goes to such a great cause as well. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. I will link details to like your website and your Instagram as well, so that people can just click away. Melody, just as you were sharing, I was just getting emotional because I could just feel God's hand over Be Hers, and just how he's just been weaving his way through everything you guys are doing. And so my prayer today is that women who feel that they want to do something will partner with Be Hers, because it's such a great organization, but also be encouraged to step out into what God has for them, because it's an incredible, when we are obedient to what God has for us, it's such an incredible journey. And there's hardships, of course, as you were talking about your health, but just seeing how God has just blessed your organization time and time again, I just think, gosh, women, just go for it. Just go for it. Get out there, do it. Show up to whatever God is calling you to do. And So Melody, as we close off today, are there any last remarks or thoughts that you would like to share?
I think as Christian women, I think just be brave enough to pray the prayer. I remember as a kid, I always would pray, God, just break my heart for what breaks yours. And I think that's what he did with this cause for me. My heart broke for these women and children, and God cares about the brokenhearted. And so be brave enough to pray the prayer. And yeah, like you said, don't wait for the perfect plan. Like, God will make a way. Isn't that the story of every single person in the Bible? God will make a way, but you just have to step out in whatever that is, and it will be worth it. It might be hard, but it will be so worth it.
Yeah, so great. Thank you so much, Melody, for being on my show today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's lovely.
And I will leave links to Be Her, so that if you would like to donate or if you would like to buy some of their resources, you can do so. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed today's interview, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone. See you later.